Atomic Habits by James Clear. Introduction. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a practical and inspiring guide to understanding how small changes in your habits can produce transformative results over time. The central idea of the book revolves around the power of tiny, incremental changes, habits that may seem insignificant on a daily basis, but over time, compound into extraordinary results. By focusing on improving just 1% each day, you set yourself up for long-term success, allowing consistency to work in your favor. Clear, a renowned expert in the field of habits and productivity, has spent years researching how behavior, habits, and environmental design contribute to success or failure. In Atomic Habits, he shares these findings in a clear and approachable way, offering strategies for adopting new, positive habits and breaking negative, self-destructive ones. This summary will give you a glimpse into the core ideas presented in the book, but it is not a substitute for the depth and insights you'll gain from reading it fully. Consider this an introduction to Clear's wisdom and pick up the book for a complete experience. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. Imagine you're trying to make a major change in your life. The natural tendency is to believe that you need to do something drastic, make a grand gesture, or overhaul your entire routine. However, Clear turns this idea on its head by showing you that massive success comes not from big moves, but from small, consistent changes. These changes, what he calls atomic habits, are tiny habits that may seem inconsequential at first, but, over time, they add up to create remarkable results. Clear uses the analogy of an airplane. If a plane taking off from Los Angeles adjusts its course by just a few degrees, it will end up in an entirely different destination, possibly landing in New York instead of Washington, D.C. This small shift is hardly noticeable in the beginning, but the impact is dramatic over time. Similarly, your daily habits may seem small and insignificant, but they determine the trajectory of your life. The principle of compounding plays a crucial role here. Just like compound interest in finance, your habits compound over time. You won't notice a massive change in a single day, but over months and years, those small changes will either work for you or against you, depending on whether your habits are positive or negative. The 1% improvements you make today might not feel like much, but in the long run, they can lead to exponential growth. Conversely, 1% declines will compound into negative outcomes. The main takeaway here is that you should stop chasing instant gratification and massive changes. Instead, focus on getting 1% better each day. Over time, the accumulation of these improvements will lead to profound results. It's the power of slow, steady progress that will propel you toward your goals, far more effectively than short bursts of motivation. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity, and vice versa. One of the most profound insights Clear offers is the relationship between your habits and your identity. Many people focus on the outcomes they want, like losing weight, saving money, or writing a book, but they don't consider the identity they need to adopt to make those outcomes happen. Clear argues that if you focus on your identity first, the results will follow naturally. This is where he introduces the idea of identity-based habits. Most people try to change their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve, outcome-based habits. For example, you might set a goal to run a marathon. But Clear suggests that it's far more effective to focus on who you want to become, identity-based habits. Instead of saying, "I want to run a marathon," you say, "I am a runner." When you adopt the identity of a runner, all your actions align with this identity. You naturally start running more often, eating better, and getting enough rest because that's what runners do. Your habits are a reflection of your identity. The more you repeat a behavior, the more you reinforce the identity that goes with it. If you consistently show up at the gym, you begin to see yourself as a person who values fitness. If you write every day, you start to identify as a writer. The reverse is also true. When you break a bad habit, you're signaling to yourself that you're the type of person who doesn't engage in that behavior anymore. The key takeaway is to focus on the type of person you want to become, not just on the goals you want to achieve. Once you align your habits with your desired identity, your actions will naturally flow from that identity, making it easier to achieve your goals. Chapter 3. The 4 Laws of Behavior Change. In this chapter, Clear introduces the 4 laws of behavior change, which form the core framework of how to create and maintain good habits while breaking bad ones. These laws are simple, actionable, and rooted in behavioral science. By following them, you can effectively shape your habits to work for you rather than against you. The 4 laws of behavior change are: 1. Make it obvious. 2. Make it attractive. 3. Make it easy. 4. Make it satisfying. Let's break these down. Make it obvious. If you want to build a new habit, the first step is to make it clear what you're trying to achieve. Your environment plays a significant role in this. If you want to eat healthier, for example, start by making healthy food options visible. Clear encourages you to design your environment in a way that supports your new habits. You should place cues for your good habits in plain sight, and make the cues for bad habits less visible or harder to access. Make it attractive. Humans are naturally drawn to things that are attractive or rewarding. By making your new habit appealing, you'll increase your chances of sticking to it. Clear suggests you use a technique called temptation bundling to pair something you need to do with something you want to do. If you love watching TV, but you need to exercise more, only allow yourself to watch your favorite show while you're working out. This makes the habit more attractive and, therefore, more likely to stick. Make it easy. One of the biggest obstacles to adopting new habits is friction, anything that makes the habit difficult or complicated. To overcome this, simplify your habits. The easier you make the habit, the more likely you are to perform it. For instance, if you want to read more, make sure you have a book readily accessible on your nightstand or carry one with you during the day. The fewer steps it takes to start a habit, the more likely you'll engage in it. Make it satisfying. We are more likely to repeat behaviors that feel rewarding. By making your new habit satisfying, you'll reinforce the behavior and increase the likelihood of sticking with it. Immediate rewards work better than delayed ones, so find ways to make your habits feel good right away. For example, tracking your progress visually, such as checking off a calendar every day you stick to your habit, can provide immediate satisfaction. When you apply these 4 laws together, you're designing an environment and system that makes it almost inevitable for you to succeed in building positive habits and breaking negative ones. Chapter 4. The Man Who Didn't Look Right. In this chapter, Clear shares a powerful story about the role of cues in behavior. He recounts a real-life example of a nurse who noticed something subtle and unusual in a patient that other doctors had missed. Although there were no obvious signs of distress, the nurse felt that something wasn't right with the patient. This hunch, based on thousands of hours of experience and subconscious pattern recognition, proved to be correct. The patient had a life-threatening condition that was only caught because of the nurse's attuned observation. This story illustrates how our brains are constantly processing cues from our environment, often without our conscious awareness. These cues trigger habitual behaviors that we've learned over time. The key to building better habits is to become aware of the cues that lead to them. Once you identify a cue, you can either design your environment to encourage good habits or minimize cues that lead to bad ones. Clear emphasizes that the brain is always on the lookout for cues to help it navigate the world more efficiently. This is why habits form in the first place. They're shortcuts for the brain to save energy and operate on autopilot. The challenge, then, is to consciously design your environment so that the cues for good habits are obvious and the cues for bad habits are hidden. For example, if you want to practice the guitar more often, make sure your guitar is visible and easy to access. Leave it out in your living room or next to your desk so that every time you walk by, the cue triggers the thought to pick it up and practice. Conversely, if you're trying to reduce distractions while working, remove cues that trigger bad habits, like turning off notifications on your phone or placing your phone in a different room. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. Starting a new habit can be daunting, but Clear offers a simple yet powerful strategy called implementation intentions. This technique involves setting a specific plan for when and where you'll perform your new habit. Instead of vaguely stating, "I'll exercise more," you create a clear, actionable plan. "I will go for a 30-minute run at 6:30 a.m. in the park." When you set a clear time and location for your habit, you're more likely to follow through. This is because the behavior becomes tied to a specific cue, making it easier for your brain to remember and execute the habit. The ambiguity of "I'll do it later" disappears, and the action becomes part of your routine. Another effective strategy Clear introduces is habit stacking. This involves linking a new habit to an existing one. You take a habit you already do consistently, like brushing your teeth or making coffee, and stack a new habit onto it. For example, if you want to start meditating, you could stack it with your morning routine. "After I make my morning coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes." Habit stacking works because it leverages the automaticity of your existing habits. You're already performing certain behaviors on autopilot, so adding a new habit to the mix helps it integrate into your daily life with minimal effort. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. In this chapter, James Clear challenges the conventional belief that motivation is the most important factor in building good habits or breaking bad ones. While motivation can be helpful in the short term, relying solely on it is unreliable and unsustainable. Motivation fluctuates based on your mood, energy levels, and external circumstances. That's why, when it comes to lasting habit change, your environment plays a far more significant role than your motivation. Clear emphasizes that the most successful people in life are not the most motivated, but those who structure their environment in a way that makes it easier to make the right choices and harder to make the wrong ones. Your surroundings have a profound effect on your behavior because they provide the cues that trigger habits. If your environment is designed to encourage good habits, you won't need as much willpower or motivation to stick with them. For instance, if you're trying to eat healthier, the best way to ensure success isn't to constantly rely on motivation to resist unhealthy food. Instead, you should design your kitchen environment in a way that makes healthy choices the path of least resistance. Keep fruits and vegetables easily accessible, place them front and center in your fridge, and get rid of junk food. By doing this, you've already made the healthy choice easier, even before motivation comes into play. On the flip side, if you want to break a bad habit, you should aim to reduce the environmental cues that trigger it. For example, if you're trying to cut down on TV time, you can remove the batteries from the remote or unplug the television after each use. These small friction points make it harder to engage in the bad habit, reducing your reliance on motivation to stop the behavior. Clear's message here is simple. You don't need to rely on self-discipline if you can control your environment. By thoughtfully arranging your surroundings, you make the habits you want to adopt more automatic, while bad habits become harder to engage in. Environment design is a powerful tool in your habit-building toolkit and, when used correctly, can make good habits feel almost effortless. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. Many people believe that self-control is the secret to breaking bad habits and sticking to good ones. However, Clear argues that self-control, like motivation, is unreliable over the long term. While you can exert willpower in the short term to resist temptation, relying on self-control alone is not a sustainable strategy. In fact, people who appear to have strong self-control often just have better environmental design. They've set up their surroundings in a way that removes temptations, so they don't have to exert as much willpower in the first place. Clear shares research on self-control that shows most people tend to overestimate their ability to resist temptation. The reality is that if you're constantly exposed to triggers that prompt your bad habits, you will eventually give in. This is why the most effective way to exercise self-control is not to test your willpower over and over again, but to design your environment in a way that removes those temptations altogether. For example, if you have a habit of scrolling through social media when you're supposed to be working, you could try using website blockers or putting your phone in another room while you focus on your tasks. By removing the temptation, you reduce the need for self-control. This proactive approach allows you to avoid situations where willpower is required in the first place. Clear emphasizes that you should not see self-control as a muscle that you need to constantly flex. Instead, think of it as a temporary resource that gets depleted over time. The more you rely on willpower, the more exhausted you become, and the more likely you are to give in to bad habits. By designing your environment to minimize temptations, you make it easier to stay on track and stick to the habits that align with your goals. Chapter 8. How to Make a Habit Irresistible. One of the key insights from Atomic Habits is that for a habit to stick, it needs to be not only obvious and easy but also attractive. Clear explains that we're more likely to engage in habits that we find enjoyable or rewarding, thanks to the way our brains are wired. The more pleasurable a behavior is, the more likely we are to repeat it. This chapter delves into the concept of dopamine-driven feedback loops. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain associated with pleasure and reward, and it plays a crucial role in habit formation. When you engage in a behavior that triggers a dopamine release, your brain remembers it as a pleasurable experience and encourages you to repeat it in the future. This is why certain habits, like eating junk food or binge-watching TV shows, are so easy to form. They provide instant gratification and a rush of dopamine. To make a new habit stick, you need to make it attractive by associating it with a positive reward. One way to do this is through temptation bundling, a technique that involves pairing something you want to do with something you need to do. For instance, if you enjoy listening to podcasts but struggle to exercise regularly, you can allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast only while you're at the gym. By bundling these two activities together, you make the exercise habit more attractive because it's linked to something you already enjoy. Another technique Clear suggests is to reframe your habits in a way that makes them more appealing. Instead of focusing on the effort required to build a new habit, focus on the positive outcome or feeling that comes from it. For example, instead of saying, "I have to go to the gym," you could reframe it as, "I get to go to the gym and feel energized afterward." This simple shift in perspective can make the habit feel more rewarding and, therefore, more likely to stick. Ultimately, the more enjoyable or satisfying a habit is, the more likely you are to repeat it. By finding ways to make your new habits more attractive, you can tap into your brain's natural reward system and create a positive feedback loop that reinforces the behavior over time. Chapter 9. The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. Humans are social creatures, and we tend to adopt the behaviors of those around us. In this chapter, Clear explains that the people you spend the most time with have a significant influence on your habits, both good and bad. If your social circle regularly engages in certain behaviors, you're likely to pick up on those behaviors as well, whether consciously or unconsciously. Clear calls this phenomenon social reinforcement, where the habits and norms of a group shape the behavior of its members. If everyone in your friend group exercises regularly, you're more likely to start exercising too, because you'll feel a sense of belonging and social pressure to fit in. On the other hand, if your friends have a habit of smoking or eating unhealthy foods, you may find it harder to resist those habits because they're normalized within the group. One of the key takeaways from this chapter is that you should surround yourself with people who have the habits you want to adopt. If you want to become more productive, spend time with people who prioritize their work and focus on personal development. If you want to improve your fitness, join a community of people who enjoy exercising. By aligning yourself with people who embody the behaviors you want to cultivate, you increase your chances of adopting those behaviors yourself. Clear also discusses how you can use social accountability to your advantage. When you make your habits public and enlist the help of friends or family to hold you accountable, you create an additional layer of motivation to stick to your habits. Whether it's joining a workout group, having an accountability partner for a specific goal, or sharing your progress with friends, social accountability can provide the extra push you need to stay on track. It's important to remember that you don't have to overhaul your entire social circle to adopt better habits. Even small shifts in who you spend time with or how you engage with others can have a significant impact on your behavior. By intentionally surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be better, you create an environment where good habits are more likely to flourish. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the cause of your bad habits. In this chapter, Clear helps you understand why bad habits exist in the first place. He explains that bad habits don't develop in a vacuum. They are usually responses to specific cues or triggers in your environment. Every bad habit serves a purpose, whether it's providing comfort, relieving stress, or offering a sense of instant gratification. The first step in breaking a bad habit is to identify the underlying cue that triggers it. For example, if you have a habit of eating junk food late at night, the trigger might be boredom or stress. Once you identify the cue, you can take steps to address the root cause rather than simply trying to suppress the habit. In the case of late-night snacking, you could find healthier ways to manage your stress or boredom, such as reading a book, going for a walk, or practicing mindfulness. Clear also encourages you to analyze the reward you're getting from your bad habit. Every habit, whether good or bad, provides some form of reward, even if it's short-lived. By understanding the reward, you can find alternative behaviors that provide a similar sense of satisfaction but align with your long-term goals. For instance, if smoking helps you relax, you could replace it with deep breathing exercises or a calming cup of tea to achieve the same result without the negative health consequences. Breaking bad habits is not about sheer willpower. It's about understanding the cues and rewards that drive them and finding healthier alternatives to meet the same needs. Clear emphasizes that lasting change comes from replacing bad habits with good ones that serve the same purpose but lead to more positive outcomes. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. One of the most important lessons Clear offers in this chapter is the idea that progress, no matter how slow, is still progress. Too often, people give up on their new habits because they don't see immediate results. However, success is not about overnight transformations. It's about consistent effort over time. Clear introduces the concept of plateaus of latent potential, which refers to the period when you're putting in the effort but not yet seeing the results. This can be frustrating because it feels like all your hard work is for nothing. But, as Clear explains, real change happens under the surface, and it often takes time before the effects become visible. It's like watching an ice cube slowly melt. The temperature rises gradually, but the change isn't noticeable until it reaches the melting point. The key is to stay consistent and trust the process, even when progress seems slow. Instead of getting discouraged by the lack of immediate results, focus on the small wins and improvements you're making each day. Over time, these small changes will accumulate, and you'll start to see the compounding effects of your efforts. Clear also emphasizes the importance of getting back on track quickly when you slip up. No one is perfect, and it's natural to miss a day or fall off the wagon from time to time. However, the difference between successful people and those who give up is that successful people don't let a single setback derail their progress. They get back on track quickly and continue moving forward. The takeaway from this chapter is that patience and persistence are essential when building new habits. Change takes time, and the most important thing is to keep moving forward, even if progress seems slow. As long as you're consistent and committed, the results will eventually come. Chapter 12. The Goldilocks Rule: How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. In this chapter, Clear introduces the Goldilocks Rule, which states that humans experience peak motivation when they are working on tasks that are neither too easy nor too difficult, tasks that are just right. This concept is based on the idea that we are most engaged and motivated when we are working at the edge of our abilities, where the challenge is manageable but still requires effort. When a task is too easy, you get bored. When a task is too difficult, you get discouraged and lose motivation. But when a task is perfectly balanced between challenge and skill, you enter a state of flow, where you're fully immersed in the activity and feel a sense of satisfaction from making progress. Clear explains that the key to staying motivated in life and work is to find tasks that challenge you just enough to keep you engaged without overwhelming you. This is why setting small, achievable goals is so important when building new habits. If your goals are too ambitious, you'll likely get discouraged and give up. But if your goals are manageable, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment each time you achieve them, which will motivate you to keep going. For example, if you're trying to build a habit of running, don't start by aiming to run a marathon. Instead, start with a goal of running for just 10 minutes a day. This goal is challenging enough to push you out of your comfort zone, but not so difficult that it feels impossible. As you build your running habit, you can gradually increase the distance and duration, but the key is to start small and build momentum over time. The Goldilocks Rule is a reminder that motivation is not something you have to constantly chase. Instead, it's something that naturally arises when you're working on tasks that are appropriately challenging. By finding the right balance between challenge and skill, you can stay motivated and engaged in your habits for the long term. Chapter 13. How to Stick with Good Habits Every Day. Consistency is the key to habit formation, but sticking with good habits day after day can be challenging, especially when life gets busy or unexpected obstacles arise. In this chapter, Clear offers practical strategies for staying consistent with your habits, even when you're faced with setbacks. One of the most effective strategies Clear suggests is to use a technique called habit tracking. This involves keeping a record of your habit streaks, how many consecutive days you've performed the habit. By visually tracking your progress, you create a sense of accomplishment and accountability that makes it easier to stick with your habits. For example, if you're trying to build a habit of writing every day, you can create a habit tracker where you mark off each day that you write. The goal is to keep the streak going for as long as possible, and the visual representation of your progress can provide the motivation you need to stay consistent. Clear emphasizes the importance of never breaking the chain. Once you've built up a habit streak, your primary goal is to keep it alive, even if you can only do a little bit each day. Another strategy for staying consistent is to plan for failure. No one is perfect, and there will inevitably be days when you miss a habit or fall off track. The key is to have a plan in place for how you'll respond when this happens. Instead of letting a single slip-up derail your progress, focus on getting back on track as quickly as possible. Clear calls this the 2-day rule. If you miss a habit one day, make sure you get back to it the next day. This simple rule helps you stay consistent over the long term, even when life gets in the way. Clear also emphasizes the importance of making your habits as easy as possible to maintain. This ties back to the idea of reducing friction. If you can make the habit easy to perform, even when you're tired or busy, you'll be more likely to stick with it. For example, if you're trying to build a habit of going to the gym, pack your gym bag the night before and leave it by the door. This small action reduces the friction of getting ready in the morning and makes it easier to stick with your habit, even on days when you're feeling less motivated. The key takeaway from this chapter is that consistency is more important than perfection. It's better to do a little bit every day than to aim for perfection and burn out. By tracking your habits, planning for failure, and making your habits as easy as possible to maintain, you can stay consistent and build lasting habits that lead to long-term success. Chapter 14. How to break the chain of bad habits. Breaking bad habits can be challenging because they often provide immediate rewards, even if they're detrimental in the long run. In this chapter, Clear offers practical strategies for breaking the chain of bad habits by making them less attractive and more difficult to engage in. One of the most effective ways to break a bad habit is to increase the friction associated with it. For example, if you have a habit of checking social media too often, you can make it more difficult to access your accounts by deleting the apps from your phone or setting up blockers during certain times of the day. The more steps it takes to engage in the bad habit, the less likely you are to do it. Clear also suggests using an accountability partner to help you break bad habits. When you involve someone else in your habit-breaking journey, you create an additional layer of accountability that makes it harder to give in to temptation. For example, if you're trying to quit smoking, you could ask a friend or family member to check in on your progress and hold you accountable for sticking to your goal. Another strategy for breaking bad habits is to reframe the way you think about them. Instead of focusing on the immediate pleasure the habit provides, focus on the long-term consequences. For example, if you're trying to quit junk food, remind yourself of how it makes you feel sluggish and unhealthy in the long run. By shifting your focus from the short-term reward to the long-term cost, you can make the bad habit less appealing. Ultimately, breaking bad habits requires a combination of increased friction, accountability, and a shift in mindset. By making the bad habit harder to engage in and focusing on the negative consequences, you can break the chain and replace it with healthier behaviors. Chapter 15. The Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. In this chapter, Clear introduces the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. This rule is based on the idea that habits are formed through immediate feedback. If a behavior feels good right away, you're more likely to repeat it. Conversely, if a behavior leads to immediate discomfort or punishment, you're less likely to engage in it. One of the reasons bad habits are so easy to form is that they often provide immediate rewards, even if the long-term consequences are negative. For example, eating junk food may provide instant gratification, but it leads to long-term health issues. On the other hand, good habits like exercise often have delayed rewards. The benefits of working out may not be immediately noticeable, but they accumulate over time. To build good habits, you need to find ways to make the immediate rewards more satisfying. This could involve using a reward system, where you treat yourself to something enjoyable after completing a habit. For example, You could allow yourself to watch an episode of your favorite show only after you've completed a workout. By creating an immediate reward, you make the habit more appealing in the short term, which increases the likelihood that you'll stick with it. Clear also emphasizes the importance of making the long-term rewards of good habits more visible. For example, if you're trying to save money, you could create a visual representation of your progress, such as a chart or graph that shows how much you've saved over time. Seeing the long-term benefits in a tangible way can make the habit more satisfying and motivate you to keep going. The cardinal rule of behavior change reminds you that immediate rewards and punishments shape your habits. By finding ways to make good habits more immediately rewarding and bad habits less attractive, you can create a system that encourages positive behavior change. Chapter 16. How to create a habit that lasts. Building a habit that lasts requires more than just starting strong. It requires staying consistent over the long term. In this chapter, Clear offers strategies for creating habits that stand the test of time by focusing on the process rather than the outcome. One of the key principles Clear introduces is the idea of never missing twice. It's natural to miss a habit occasionally, but the key to long-term success is to get back on track as quickly as possible. If you miss a day at the gym or skip a meditation session, don't let it turn into a pattern. Make it a rule to never miss 2 days in a row. This simple rule helps you stay consistent even when life gets in the way. Another important principle is to focus on the process, not the outcome. Many people get discouraged when they don't see immediate results from their habits, but Clear emphasizes that the most important thing is to stick with the process. If you focus on showing up every day and putting in the effort, the results will come in time. Clear also suggests using the concept of identity-based habits to create lasting change. Instead of focusing on specific goals, focus on the type of person you want to become. For example, instead of setting a goal to lose weight, focus on becoming the type of person who exercises regularly and eats healthily. When your habits are tied to your identity, they become a natural part of who you are, making it easier to stick with them in the long run. By following these strategies, you can create habits that last and continue to benefit you over time. Chapter 17. The importance of reflection and review. In this final chapter, Clear emphasizes the importance of reflection and review in the habit-building process. While consistency is crucial, it's also important to periodically reflect on your progress and make adjustments as needed. Clear suggests conducting regular reviews of your habits to assess what's working and what's not. This could involve a weekly or monthly check-in where you evaluate your progress and identify any areas where you can improve. By reflecting on your habits, you can make small tweaks to optimize your routine and ensure that you're staying on track. He also encourages you to celebrate your successes along the way. Building habits can be challenging, so it's important to acknowledge the progress you've made and reward yourself for sticking with it. Whether it's treating yourself to something special or simply taking a moment to reflect on how far you've come, celebrating your wins can provide the motivation you need to keep going. The key takeaway from this chapter is that habit building is a continuous process. By regularly reflecting on your progress and making adjustments as needed, you can stay consistent and continue to improve over time. Conclusion. In Atomic Habits, James Clear shows that real, lasting change doesn't come from massive overhauls or bursts of motivation. It comes from small, consistent actions that compound over time. By focusing on getting just 1% better each day, you can achieve remarkable results in the long run. Clear's 4 laws of behavior change: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying, provide a simple, actionable framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones. By designing your environment, leveraging social accountability, and focusing on immediate rewards, you can create a system that supports your success. Remember, the key to lasting habit change is consistency. It's not about being perfect, but about showing up every day and making small improvements. Over time, these small changes will add up, leading to big transformations in your life. Whether you're looking to improve your health, finances, productivity, or relationships, the principles in Atomic Habits can help you achieve your goals. By focusing on the process and staying committed to your habits, you can create a life that reflects the person you want to become.